The Owl House has come to an end. Despite all the hardships, Luz and her friends can now finally relax, because every little thing that has happened over the course of the show led to this happy ending. Makes you wonder if the outcome might have been noticeably different, or horrific even, if anything had been different. What if something small had been changed? What if the show's main elements are modified? What if Ida had not been cursed? To be more precise, there are two ways this idea can be understood. Lilith never cursed Ida at all, or Ida is not cursed anymore at the time when the show takes place. While the first interpretation does sound more promising, the other one actually is. Let me quickly guide you through the short Route 1 before we'll dive into Route 2, that features 4 possible endings. Lilith and Ida are scheduled to fight tomorrow, to determine who of them will be allowed to join the Emperor's Coven. Lilith decides she wants a fair fight against her sister. May the better witch win. Thus that night, she's not making a nice shopping trip to the black market, not acquiring an owl curse. But the outcome of their duel does not differ from the original, as Ida's decision not to join the coven is independent from her curse. What does change, however, is that Ida's not humiliated in front of everybody. Without the owl beast making her life hell, she does not become an outcast, and does not hurt her father, meaning they are staying in touch over the next 30 years. More importantly though, without the curse, Gwendolyn is not desperately trying to heal Ida over and over again, what originally got too much for her, leading up to Ida finding the portal to the human realm. Now, Ida has no reason to run away, and is never stumbling across the portal. Evidently, the consequences are tremendous, changing the story of the Owl House beyond recognition. Ida is not breaking up with Raine, she cannot go to the human realm, and in turn, Luz never arrives on the Boiling Isles. Philip's scheme probably works out perfectly, without Luz there to foil his every plan. Of course, only under the assumption that even without Luz traveling back in time, Philip would have sooner or later succeeded in meeting the Collector anyway, through the help of someone else. And God knows what happens then. Now, that was a fast route, not a huge surprise though, considering how essential a part of the story Ida's curse and the portal have been. So let's head over to the longer route. Instead of Ida not being cursed at all, Lilith does cast a curse on her like she did in the original. But this time around, the curse just works the way it's supposed to. At least more or less. Put shortly, the curse is not permanent and vanishes after some time. What's important here is that the curse remains just long enough for Ida to find the portal, but disappears long before Luz comes to the Boiling Isles, so that all of the curse's serious consequences before the main storyline are averted, and Ida is no longer cursed when the main story takes its course. Quick summary. This means Ida and Raine are still a couple. Ida has a normal relationship to her father, and Lilith is not obsessed with getting Ida to join the Emperor's Coven because she's not dependent on Belos to heal the curse. Apart from that, nothing much changes regarding the majority of Season 1, except of course that the events with a rather direct relation to the curse do not come to pass. Things begin to considerably take a different course towards the end of the season. There are several ways this episode could play out, and I'm going to explain the most important ones here. However, due to the curse's absence, all of them have the same outcome, because the curse is in fact the root of all the painful things originally happening in this episode. Alternative 1. With no curse needing to be healed, Luz does not sneak away from her group during the visit to the Emperor's castle, thus is not caught by Lilith. The school outing ends and Luz returns to the Owl House. Alternative 2. As mentioned before, there are no circumstances making it important to Lilith in any way that Ida joins the coven. Of course, Belos wants her to join one, but personally, Lilith has no interest in that. And since Ida is her sister, she lets her be. Accordingly, doesn't give two shits about Luz either. Alternative 3. Maybe Lilith is still set on getting Ida to join the Emperor's Coven, not out of her original motivations of course, rather because she wants to be useful to Belos, even without the curse as the perfect opportunity to manipulate Lilith into getting him Ida's portal. He can literally tell Lilith any lie and she'll believe it. She's got that weird worshipping kink after all. Additionally, Luz still gets in trouble during the trip, not because she's looking for a way way to heal Ida, just because she's loose. And trouble is her business. In other words, Agony of a Witch occurs the way it did originally, up to Lilith and Ida's fight. Not being weakened by the curse in general, and without running out of magic, Ida settles things with Lilith rather quickly. Luz is set free, and they flee back to the owl house. The whole petrification thingy is not even an option. Thus, the portal is fully intact and remains in Ida's possession. Furthermore, Lilith does not become an ally. Well, she's not a real antagonist either, because there's overall been a lot less bad blood between the sisters, and the recent fighting between them is really just due to their positions, nothing personal. She's just still a part of the Emperor's Coven, and is therefore not joining the others at the Owl House. At any rate, life at the Owl House continues just the way it used to, and in time, summer camp back on Earth comes to an end. Being in possession of the portal, Luz can just go back home when the time comes around. But when she arrives, she finds herself face to face with herself. Just like on the original timeline, V has taken her place. Of course, there is still a chance that Luz comes clean with Camila at this point and tells her everything. However, seeing that V wants to stay on Earth and can cover for her perfectly, them striking up a deal is just much more likely, with the sole difference to the OT being that Luz can return anytime and have V hide whenever she wants to take her own place. And from that point on, in the original show, Season 2 was really taking off with the important stuff. Due to the new circumstances on this timeline, these events take a completely different form, or do not even occur at all. Let's summarize now what does happen in what way, and what does not happen, making up the new set of conditions before the Day of Unity. For starters, taking into account that no one has lost their magic powers at the end of Season 1, Luz is not teaching Ida and Lilith how to use glyphs. Only with their help she figured out how to properly combine the four main glyphs, meaning on this timeline she may never understand, or at least takes much longer, creating quite a few more inconveniences for her than originally. But she and her friends are in for way more trouble than they bargained for, because of the following changes. As explained before, Luz can jump back and forth between the realms all she likes. In contrast to the OT, she's not desperately attempting to build her own portal, hence she never acquires Philip Wittebane's diary. Consequently, anything relating to Philip is sweepingly erased from the timeline. For example, in Hollow Mind she unveils that Belos is actually a human called Philip Wittebane, but is almost unaffected by that knowledge because she's never heard of any Philip before. Or another instance, without the diary and the intention to build a portal, there's no mission to Eclipse Lake, where Hunter originally obtained the portal key from Amity. On this timeline, Belos does not get his hands on any Titan's blood, being forced to keep pursuing Ida instead, and probably being bullied by the Collector for not getting anything done without his help. Most notably, however, Luz is not traveling back in time to meet him. Can someone from the class tell me what the issue is here? Exactly. We already answered that at the beginning of the video. Theoretically, if Luz never visits the Savage Ages, Philip never got to meet the Collector, thus cannot become the Belos we know and cannot gain access to the draining spell. For entirety's sake, Belos not being an actual threat is a possible scenario. On that timeline, Luz would not run into any real problems during her time on the Boiling Isles. Doesn't sound so bad, does it? But obviously, that's the most boring route. Moreover, we've arrived at this point under the assumption that Belos is successfully working towards the Day of Unity. What means that even without Luz and Lilith, sooner or later, someone else would have played their parts, granting Philip access to the Collector and his magic. Continuing our list of doom, on grounds of Lilith's absence, King does not return to the island where he was born. Consequently, does not unveil anything about his past. Thus, without any incentive to do so, Ida is not giving him back his horn, so that King doesn't regain his lost memories. As a result, the episode Knock Knock Knocking on Hooty's Door goes down very differently. King and Ida both don't have anything on their minds, meaning that Hooty isn't fixated on helping them, what originally incited the discovery of King's powers and Ida's harpy form. By the way, the harpy form is obviously not happening at all on this timeline, since the curse is missing. Moreover, without Hooty throwing a temper tantrum, Lumity might not become official in this episode. No, I am the writer of this AU and I'm deciding Lumity is a thing in any universe. And no, you can't fight me on that. In any case, clueless about his origin, King's not going viral with a video message for his father. Quite inconvenient, because this message caught the Titan Trapper's attention and led to King realizing he is a Titan. In a minute I'll tell you exactly what consequences this has. But let's continue the timeline linearly from this point on, because we're nearing the showdown. Not being in possession of a functioning portal, Belos is not entirely ready for the Day of Unity. Still, he announces it to the public, because regardless of the worlds being combined or not, he is going to erase magic on that day. Accordingly, as the day draws closer, his pawns besiege the Owl House, forcing everyone to evacuate to the knee, which is when King accidentally leaves Francois at the Owl House. However, not having had an existential crisis earlier, King is not in dire need of cheering up. Luz and Ida do not infiltrate an Emperor's Coven base to retrieve Francois. Safely secluded at the knee, they aren't caught by their disguised rebel friends. At this point, we are discovering a new end to this timeline. As chance does not reunite Luz, Ida and Raine, the rebels have no clue where Ida is to recruit her for help. Not to mention, it's questionable they'd even need her, given without the curse to corrupt the draining spell, there's no real plan to stop Belos anyway. Hidden away at the safest place possible, Ida, King and Luz are not even present when 90% of the Boiling Isle's population is wiped out. In fact, they might even seek shelter on Earth while it's happening. It's hard to tell where the story would be going from there. Potentially, this could be an amazing chance to start a post-apocalyptic type of revenge arc in Season 3. Alternatively, the show could also just end there. The main characters would be better off fleeing to Earth, because if they decided to stay, sooner or later, Belos would find them. But this timeline can continue. Remember that Ida and Raine are still dating. On top of that, Raine have never been manipulated by Terra. Quick digression. Ida was part of Raine's rebellion from the beginning. They still ended up walking into Darius and Eberwolf's trap, thinking it's a great chance to deal a blow to Belos. Fortunately, Ida has not been weakened through the curse, making it possible the two managed to escape together. Taking all this into account, Ida and Raine are constantly holding contact, so that Raine are aware Ida is temporarily hiding out at the knee. As the corruption plan remains unavailable, the cats come up with another plan. Evidently, any other plan is even more so doomed to fail than the corruption plan was on the OT. But at the very least, this plan makes it so that Luz, King and Ida are at the ceremony, which is the most important thing. In order to reach more exciting endings on this timeline that do not all only end in misfortune, let's assume the rebels got very creative and managed to drag out the draining spell long enough for Luz to go face Belos like she did on the OT. This time around she's not alone though. Considering there's not much use for Ida on the podium, she's accompanying Luz, not wanting her to face Belos alone. With Ida's support, Luz and the gang struggle a lot less fighting Belos, and might even be able to pin him down effectively. However, the draining spell cannot be stopped just by catching Belos. If no one can come up with a way to stop it, this route will keep ending in genocide all over again. At this point I should mention that King is not simply walking around on his own looking for the Collector. Firstly, because his friends aren't struggling and he's not pressed about supporting them. Secondly, because without Philip's diary and the visit to the Titan Trappers, no one has ever heard of the Collector. The thing is, he probably still has this certain spiritual connection to the Collector. That he has no knowledge of him does not change the fact that King's a Titan, and that his father sealed the Collector. Eventually, King is going to follow the Collector's voice. In contrast to the OT though, he's not going alone. While Ida stays to keep Belos in check, Luz and maybe her friends accompany King. Interestingly, despite still immediately recognizing King as a Titan, the Collector is not aware that he is the son of the Titan who sealed him, because King is not in possession of the the gold medal he found on his birth island. In any case, the collector asks to be set free. Seeing as no one has any clue who the collector is, Luz and King are suspicious at first, questioning him to figure out if he's dangerous. Ultimately, they find themselves in too dire a situation though, and must place their faith in him, in spite of him only giving vague answers to their questions. The fact that he was betrayed by Belos adds to convincing them. In return for breaking off the draining spell, the collector is set free, and then he lays his eyes on Belos, pinned down by the owl lady. With a simple hand gesture, the collector gets rid of him. Whether it's for good this time, or if Belos returns once more like on the OT, is irrelevant, for the simple reason that no one is going to Earth this time, and the entire situation following the episode King's Tide is completely different. Let me explain. King and the collector made the same deal as originally. Thanks to Luz being there, the situation does not escalate though. After his part of the deal is done, he's not immediately starting to destroy everything, because he's eagerly listening to Luz explaining the rules of the game they are going to play. Compared to King, Luz knows better how to deal with situations like these, tricking people into doing something and then holding them off until a way out pops up. Therefore, she managed to contain him, coming up with new rules here and there to prevent him from endangering others. She's also keeping him entertained with games from the human realm. As you see, with everyone staying in the demon realm, having the collector around, it doesn't matter if Belos possesses someone. Everyone except for the collector can tell if they are face to face with Belos or not. So even if he returned, they just have the collector defeat him for real this time. Over the course of the following weeks, they slowly but surely get to know more about the collector. Sometimes he's in a talking mood, other times he gives some info away through his actions, and occasionally games like Two Truths and a Lie make him open up. With time, they do not only begin to actually get along with him, they also gradually advance in puzzling together his personality, past and motivations. Luz plays a vital role in that, since the collector is so similar to her, being an outcast, only ever wanting to indulge in his passion without being forced to conform to what others expect of him. Combining this knowledge with the trust he's developed towards Luz and her friends, they can render him harmless by carefully influencing his worldview. Being able to relate, Luz knows precisely what he wants to hear, what he needs to hear in order to feel comfortable. For one, this is great because the collector is not merely reduced to an obstacle that needs to be dealt with, but gets a known character arc, developing and growing into a better person. On top of that, Luz's development gets the finishing touch by her supporting the collector through the hardships she's had to face herself. Her friends did the same for her, and now she can be that person for someone else. The collector becomes someone who follows his passion, while spreading the joy it makes him feel. Instead of abusing his powers, controlling other people to fulfill his own desires, he uses them to create spaces where people can have fun, devoting himself to making life more enjoyable for others. Inspired by Luz, he's enabling all those who love fun and playing to fool around to their heart's content. Maybe he'll even be motivated to stand up to the other collectors, who are only spreading terror, not joy. In place of preserving species, his calling is to preserve freedom and happiness. If you made it to the end of this video, please consider subscribing. Every form of support for this channel directly supports me in creating more interesting cartoon and anime content for you. Stay safe, and if none of us get lost in another realm, I'll see you next time.